Hey guys, welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how I edge joint and make straight cuts without a jointer, without any big machinery in a small shop, just using a track saw. Now I use a Festool track saw. You don't have to buy Festool. You can buy Makita, DeWalt. They all make great track saws, but this is just what I use. So stay tuned in the video. I hope you learned something. Thanks. So here you are, you're just like me. You're using a handheld circular saw and a straight edge clamp, and you're trying to get these long, straight, perfectly flush cuts, right? Well, wrong, because little did I know until I got my track saw how off my cuts really were. I mean, they're off enough that it was pretty embarrassing. So even with this straight edge clamp, and it's a great straight edge clamp, don't get me wrong. It's from Emerson. It worked really well. It's great for cutting rough panels, like sheets of plywood, melamine, etc. But it just is not good for precise precision furniture crafting. And here's my trusty hand-me-down Craftsman circular saw. Again, just not, it's a great tool, don't get me wrong. I'm not crapping all over it. But if you need precision, if you need consistent, quick, straight cuts, you got to get a track saw. Doing this setup and then having the offset for the circular saw face plate, it was a nightmare. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't even get a straight cut. It would be wavy down the edge, or it'd be off, or the circular saw would start to bend on the outside. It would give like a slight bevel to the cut. It was a nightmare. So I bit the bullet and I got a track saw, and I got the Cadillac of all track saws. Now again, like I mentioned in the beginning, you don't need to get a Festool track saw. You can get a Makita, a DeWalt. They work just as well. But I got a Festool because I have all the Festool tools and I wanted to keep it consistent. So just a quick rundown of all the features of the saw. Here's the trigger lock. As you can see, just locks the trigger in place. You got variable speeds here. It goes from 1 to 6, and they specify what the RPMs are in the manual if you need to know that information. Now, here are the tightening knobs. This is what squares it up on the track itself. Also, it can give you a finer or rougher cut if you leave it looser or tighter, depending on what you need. I usually need a finer cut, so I make these as tight as possible without stopping it from moving. And I'll show you this in a minute once I show you the track. Now this is the miter feature of the saw, or cutting bevels or angles on your pieces. Obviously it just clamps down on either side, 2 knobs, quick and easy. This is a track stop. You slide this onto the track itself and it'll prevent this saw from moving beyond a certain distance if you need to limit yourself or you're trying to make a precise cut, for example. This is the depth stop for the cut. This is how deep you want to make your cuts. It just slides up and down. It's pretty simple and straightforward. You need to add 1/8 of an inch for the track, I've noticed. So if you are using a track, keep that in mind. For example, a 2-inch cut really is a 2 1/8 inch cut. Now onto the vacuum port. This is designed for the Festool vacuum system, but it's just a standard hose attachment. You can connect any hose you really need to with a little ingenuity. And lastly, this is just the leveling / support foot. This is just to make sure the saw is stable when you're making cuts. Now here's the actual track itself. Now that FS 1400-2 you see there, that means it's a 1400 millimeter track. That's the length of the track. They make these in all different sizes. And here's the channel that the track saw actually rests on, and here's a little groove underneath the channel that you can attach track clamps to. Now Festool makes clamps. They're very nice, they're very sturdy. If you're using them every day, constantly, I recommend getting them. But if you're cheap like me and you want to just save a few dollars, ironically, I'm buying Festool tools, so I can't say I'm too cheap. But if you want to save a few dollars on track clamps, I mean, they're just track clamps. You don't need to spend $30 on each one. I can buy 2 for 15 wens off Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So last but not least, before I show you some demonstration video, here is the saw on the track. As you can see, it goes over that channel and just slides back and forth. That's pretty much it. As you can see, here are my cheapo Wen track saw clamps. They just slide right in and clamp down. So a quick safety tip here. You need to have your track extend beyond your piece. I'm only doing this setup just as a representation. I don't plan to cut beyond the workpiece and cut all the way through. So yeah, you need to have your track extend well beyond your workpiece when you're doing these cuts. Another quick safety tip is be very careful plunging this into the piece itself. instead of plunging first and then running through the front edge of the piece. It can have some kickback, and it's going to want to grab a little bit. Also, with the riving knife, it can get caught and give some serious kickback. I've had it happen to me before, so just be extra careful when using this. And that's pretty much it. So I edge jointed these boards, and now I'm going to glue them up. And here it is. This is part of a larger project, which if I ever stop being lazy, I'll eventually make a video for. But anyways, I appreciate you watching this one. If you did make it this far, leave me a thumbs up or subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that too. Anyway, take care. Thanks again.